Hong Kong's COVID-19 infections exceed 700, with a mini cluster linked to a Tsim Sha Tsui karaoke hall among the latest cases. World Health Organization says coronavirus counts in Italy and Spain are potentially stabilizing. And the U.S. Navy hospital ship Comfort arrives in New York to support the city amid the coronavirus outbreak. Good evening and welcome. Local health authorities today reported 32 more COVID-19 cases. That brings the total in the city to 714. Sharon Tang reports.
Most of the newly reported cases have a recent travel history, with half of the patients being students who've returned from overseas. But among the domestic infections, authorities have discovered a mini cluster involving 7 people who went together to a karaoke hall in Tsim Sha Tsui, Red Mister. Authorities say 5 of them have contracted the virus and the other 2 have been put under quarantine.
It's possible they have some type of transmission during the event. If it is just an isolated room without contact with other staff or other clients, I think the possibility of further cases is not very high, but we still have to closely monitor the situation because we do not have information on the exact setting of that karaoke at the present moment.
When asked if all karaoke halls in town should be closed, the authorities only urged the public to avoid social activities. Meanwhile, the Center for Health Protection says, given the large number of people being isolated at quarantine centers, it's considering letting some of them complete the last 4 days of the 14-day quarantine at their homes. Still, officials promised to play safe if this measure is adopted.
If there is a co-living family member, who is more vulnerable, say an elderly person, then they will not be suitable to do it this way. And also, I have to stress that even if we do so, they must be asymptomatic. They are not patients, and they cannot have temperature. They have to have a negative test before we discharge them.
4 more patients have been discharged from hospitals, bringing the total to 127. But the number of patients currently in critical condition has gone up to 8. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
The hospital authority says 12 diagnosed COVID-19 patients are still waiting to be admitted to hospitals. Officials say they will use some of the 400 second-tier isolation beds to ease the pressure on isolation wards in public hospitals. Pinky Wong reports.
At Parmala Youth Nethersole Eastern Hospital, some 50 additional beds will soon be available in isolation units converted from general wards.
We have converted 2 wards already. Here is 4A and the opposite is 4B. And in Ratchanji, another ward of 12 beds. And within HA, we are talking about 400 something. I think most of these wards are ready within this week, and in fact within today or tomorrow. The number of patients who can be transferred from Tier 1 to Tier 2 ward is difficult to tell because it requires a clinical decision by the doctors themselves. So it's not something administrative. It's not something, day 7 Tier 1 and day 8 or Tier 2. It's nothing like that. And so the patient need to fulfill a set of very stringent clinical criteria. For example, no fever, the blood test, the clinical presentation, and so on.
The ventilation machine placed inside the converted ward generates negative air pressure to ensure the virus won't get out of the room. In this second-tier isolation ward, medical staff will take off their protective gowns behind this folding partition before leaving the room. To further ease the pressure on isolation wards in public hospitals, tents have been set up outside for triage purposes.
In the past, some of them will be admitted into hospital before the test, but we don't want that because we would like to preserve the isolation facilities for confirmed patients. And so they are now, the test is being done in the accident and emergency department, and while waiting, Dr. Chen talked about 5 to 8 hours, while waiting, we let them wait in individual tents with all the support so that they wait for the results. If the results come back to be negative, they go home.
Aracena Ma, president of the Hong Kong Public Doctors Association, thinks that the 400 beds will soon be used up. She thinks the authorities should consider using other spacious venues such as the Asia World Expo to accommodate recovering patients before they are discharged. Pinky Wong, TVB News.
The chief executive says it is unsatisfactory that some COVID-19 patients are not being hospitalized right away. Carrie Lam also says that despite a significant drop in coronavirus cases reported on the mainland, quarantine measures for arrivals from the mainland remain in place for now. Haley Zhou with details.
Almost 40 COVID-19 patients are known to have spent days waiting at home for admission to hospitals because of a shortage of isolation beds. The chief executive says authorities are working to speed up the hospitalization process for those who are diagnosed while under home quarantine.
It is not satisfactory for confirmed cases not to be admitted into hospital yet. But this phenomenon appears because we have a large number of arrivals from overseas who have been put on home quarantine. And the problem now lies in that capacity constraint in the hospital to admit patients in a more speedy manner.
While mainland authorities have been reporting almost no domestic coronavirus cases in recent weeks, the CE says quarantine measures for arrivals from the mainland will remain in place.
Especially given our constraints in managing the home quarantine cases and so on, there may be some justification for relaxing some of the control requirements. But my reply is no. The situation is very fluid. It may still change.
These measures are set to expire in early May.
The regulation applicable to mainland arrivals, which is Regulation 599C, will expire. Even if we do nothing, by early May, this regulation will lose its effectiveness, and then we will be able to resume some of the traffic flow without this 14-day quarantine requirement.
Haley Zhou, TVB News.
Mainland authorities today reported 48 new COVID-19 cases. The National Health Commission also said it would start including asymptomatic cases in their statistics to allay public concern. A coronavirus outbreak on the mainland has prompted authorities to postpone the annual college entrance exam by a month. The original test scheduled for June will be held in July instead. President Xi Jinping praised the work being done in containing the virus. He stressed that the success of the Communist Party lies in correcting and learning from lessons. Xi made the remarks during a visit to a village in Zhejiang province yesterday. The World Health Organization says coronavirus counts in hard-hit countries like Italy and Spain are potentially stabilizing, but warned not to let up on tough measures to limit the spread. It also appealed to G20 countries to work together to address the chronic shortage of medical protective gear. Alan Booknear reports.
The WHO's emergencies chief told a news conference that social distancing has apparently been working. Dr. Michael Ryan said the number of new coronavirus cases in Italy and Spain, Europe's two hardest-hit countries, seems to be leveling.
And what they've found through the physical distancing measures and the stay-at-home orders is the number of significant contacts per case has dropped from the 20s to 15 to 12 to 10 to 8 to 4, which means less people have been exposed to that case than would have been 2 weeks ago.
The WHO's Director General urged G20 countries to coordinate a speeding up of production of much-needed medical supplies and equipment.
And coming together is the only option we have. Unity is the only option we have to defeat this virus.
In Italy, where a lockdown has been in place for weeks, the number of new cases continues to increase, but not as steeply. Still, the number of people who died in the last day numbered 812, bringing the total to almost 11,600, maintaining Italy's position as the country with the most dead. In Spain, Europe's second hardest hit country, a cargo plane arrived in Madrid packed with medical supplies from China. The 14 metric tons of cargo included 1 million tests for COVID-19, as well as masks and personal protection equipment for medical staff. Meanwhile, in the UK, pensioners who are in self-isolation in a southern England retirement home are pitching in to help fill the need for masks.
Why are we doing it? Because we need them for the NHS, because they haven't got enough. They're washable, they're reusable, they can keep on using them, and we need to protect them.
And while the cloth masks only provide 40 to 50% protection, healthcare workers say they'd rather have that than nothing at all.
Willkommen im Edeka Marktstadtplatz.
And in Germany, a supermarket has installed a high-tech robot at the checkout counter to remind shoppers to practice social distancing. Shoppers say it puts a smile on their faces during difficult times. Alan Burnett, TVB News.
The U.S. death toll from the coronavirus pandemic has climbed past 3,000. In a grim new milestone, at least 540 deaths were reported yesterday, making it the deadliest day yet in the country's mounting crisis. Cheers along the Hudson River as the U.S. Navy hospital ship Comfort made its way to a midtown Manhattan pier. The converted oil tanker has 1,000 beds and will help treat non-coronavirus patients, including those who require surgery and critical care. New York's mayor said the ship's arrival will help free up desperately needed resources to fight the virus.
It's a daunting task, but we got a big boost. The arrival of Comfort, this is like adding a whole nother hospital to New York City.
Nearby in Central Park, construction continues on a 68-bed field hospital. While the outbreak is worse in New York than anywhere else in the U.S., the governor of New York State reiterated the virus is coming for all parts of the country.
Anyone who says this situation is a New York City only situation is in a state of denial. You see this virus move across the state. You see the virus move across this nation. There is no American who is immune to this virus.
As U.S. health officials urge Americans to follow stay-at-home orders until the end of April, the president downplayed making the order nationwide, since some parts of the country have not seen any trouble.
Hopefully we're going to be able to keep it that way by doing what we're doing. It's pretty unlikely, I would think, at this time.
Meanwhile, a key member of a White House task force says he expects the coronavirus to return later this year.
It will be a totally different ballgame of what happened when we first got hit with it. Our ability to go out and be able to test, identify, isolate, and contact trace will be orders of magnitude better than what it was just a couple of months ago.
Back in New York, the Empire State Building was lit up like an ambulance Monday night in honor of frontline healthcare workers. Experts say New York has about 45% of the nation's COVID-19 cases. The state has recorded more than 1,200 deaths. Still ahead on tonight's news. A 44% drop year-on-year in local retail sales last month. 3 major online travel agents under scrutiny by the Competition Commission. And a Van Gogh painting stolen from a Dutch museum. Welcome back to TVB News. Hong Kong's retail sales recorded a sharp year-on-year decline of 44% in February. It's the 13th consecutive month the city has seen a drop in sales figures. Caleb Leung has the details.
This morning, the chief executive urged landlords to offer rent relief to retailers as local retail sales suffered the steepest decline for a single month on record. In February, the value of total retail sales was provisionally estimated at $22.7 billion, a 44% year-on-year drop. For the first 2 months of 2020 taken together, it was provisionally estimated that the value of retail sales decreased by 31.8% compared with the same period a year ago. Sales of jewelry, watches and clocks, as well as valuable gifts, went down 58.6% year-on-year. Clothing also recorded a nearly 50% year-on-year decline. On the other hand, the value of sales of commodities in supermarkets has marked a 11.1% year-on-year hike. This was followed by the sales of fuel, which recorded a 6.5% increase. A government spokesperson said the figures reflect the heavy blow to tourism and consumption dealt by the coronavirus epidemic. Retail sales are also expected to remain extremely austere in the near term. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
Chief Executive Carrie Lam said today social distancing measures had gained initial success during the past weekend. However, gray areas in the new rules have drawn criticism from different industries, and multiple groups are pressing the government for another round of measures under the Anti-Epidemic Fund in support of those badly hit by the coronavirus outbreak.
The third day of the city's 2-week ban on public gatherings of more than 4 people. Talking to reporters this morning, Chief Executive Carrie Lam said the regulation aimed at enhancing social distancing has worked well.
We are seeing a lot of a high level of self-discipline, apart from some isolated cases.
She warned that further restrictions and harsher enforcement could be rolled out.
The police, have been giving verbal advice and warnings, but then we might give out a fixed penalty of $2,000 without warning in future.
Lam reiterated zero tolerance for breaches of the self-quarantine rule, adding that some 70 more violators are awaiting prosecution. But not everyone is happy with the harsh measures that could be put in place. Hours after Lam's speech, stakeholders from the dining industry petitioned against dining regulations, accusing the government of ignoring small and medium-sized restaurants.
If the government still like this, probably have over 50% restaurants we're facing to be closed.
They called on the government to launch a second round of relief measures to stem the wave of restaurant closures amid the outbreak. The Democratic Alliance for the Betterment and Progress of Hong Kong also demanded that the Anti-Epidemic Fund give financial assistance to foreign domestic helpers agencies. Because of travel restrictions, these agencies face huge income losses. At the same time, they have to support a large number of jobless helpers stranded in Hong Kong, which, according to the industry's estimates, is close to 1,000. Dong Yao-Nie, TVB News.
3 major online travel agents have come under scrutiny by the Competition Commission. They are Bookings.com, Expedia.com, and Trip.com. The commission investigated the agreements those companies made with hotels in Hong Kong. The travel agents allegedly required hotels and guest houses to always give them better room prices. The commission says the practice can reduce competition and put smaller players at a disadvantage. The 3 companies agreed to comply with the commission's suggestions within 90 days. A painting by Dutch master Vincent van Gogh was stolen in a smash-and-grab raid on a museum east of Amsterdam. Police say the painting, Parsonage Garden at Noonan in spring 1884, was taken in the early hours of Monday. The museum was closed to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. The value of the work was not immediately known. Van Gogh's paintings, which rarely come up for sale, fetch millions of dollars at auction. And that is our time for the news. Thanks for joining us. Bye for now.